let me never fall into the vulgar mistake of dreaming that I am persecuted whenever I am contradicted. Ralph Waldo Emerson.
You're listening to Writing Roots, brought to you by Aspen House Publishing.
Welcome to Writing Roots. I'm Lee Hull.
And I'm Lee Esses.
This is a very important topic that we're getting into today. For the purpose of leveling up your writing, getting better at being a writer, at being an author, you have to learn how to give and get feedback.
This is one of the ways that the writing club that we're part of has drastically helped push me forward and continuously helped push me forward in my own writing to become better. It's so easy to accidentally fall complacent in writing the same thing all the time. If you're listening to this series, then you're definitely less in danger of doing that. But one of the ways to make sure those skills are sharp all the time is not only the getting feedback, but giving feedback.
So what exactly does it look like? We want to get into that first. With our writing group, The Forge, we have a list of questions that we lean on to ask the people reading our short works to answer. It is fairly generic, but it helps specify what exactly we want out of that critique that day.
Of course, if you have something specific that you want feedback on, definitely tell the people who are reading it, hey, I want to know how many of these jokes actually land. That is something specific to your story. Please tell them that. If you are just like, did you like it? You don't have any particular specific questions to ask the people giving you feedback. These questions are a great resource to fall back to because they always provide useful information.
Instead of asking, did you like it? Ask specifically, what did you like?
Saying, this made me smile. That's all they need, because if no one smiled when this character gave a particular retort, okay, that joke did fall flat. The next thing that we ask kind of goes hand in hand with that, and that is, where were you bored?
Was there ever a time that you wanted to set the page aside? These are very important pieces to mark down if you are critiquing someone else's stuff, because it gives them an idea of if multiple people are getting bored in the same exact spot, then there's something that needs to change. There's something that can be fixed.
In our last writing club, everyone who read my thing all got bored in exactly the same spot. This is a big indicator to me that this can't stay this way forever.
The next question is, what do you want to know more about? Is there something that the reader is looking at and saying, I am very curious about that aspect, and that can give you an idea of what you need to focus on in the future. If you had no plans to address that again, you may need to reframe either that phrasing or reframe what you're going to do with the story.
This helps alert you to those accidental red herrings or those Chekhov guns that you are distracting the reader with if you don't intend it, or make sure that they're going on the same path that you are holding their hand in the way you want to. This can be both a good and a bad thing. Obviously, you don't want to lead the witness, so you just ask, what do you want to know more about? Also, what made you laugh? If the wrong thing makes the reader laugh every time, this can be a very clear indicator that something needs to change.
If they are laughing at something that is supposed to be very stoic and serious, there is a problem with the writing. There is a problem with the setup.
The next one is sort of a dichotomous answer, but do you want to know more about what happened before this scene that you read or after this scene that you read?
This is particularly important to pay attention to if you are giving them excerpts from a longer piece of work. Oftentimes in our group, we will share chapter 4 or 5 or 10 or whatever. We'll share something a lot further down in the story because the people in our group have a vague idea of what we're working on a larger perspective, but we need help with a specific scene. So understanding what they're looking for to come either before or after can help you know, okay, I know what happened before. Did I set this up right? And I know what's going to happen after this. Am I setting that up right?
Now, these are a good handful of fallback rules to help get those juices flowing, to give useful feedback. But there is more to being a feedback partner, a critique partner, than just this blatant information. A lot of the times when I see people go wrong with this is because they don't know how to accept or give the information that is being handed to them.
Before you ever hand over your piece of work, whether that's a short story or an excerpt or whatever, you need to think about what exactly do you want to get out of the feedback. Whatever it is, be specific about it so you can make sure you're getting the feedback that you need for your story at that time.
One of the hardest parts of communicating and getting and giving feedback is knowing how to be polite about it. I see people fall short in that they're listening to respond, to explain something, not necessarily to understand what's going through your reader's point of view.
So that's what you need to do. Listen to their feedback, listen to their criticism. You don't have to respond, you don't have to explain. Just try to understand what it is that they're getting at. The basis of what they are saying could be improved.
What you do with the information, if you're responding to it versus ingesting it, makes a world of difference in how you level up your writing.
Also, don't get revenge. You don't have to accept every piece of advice that you're receiving, but don't turn around and try to make the other person feel bad. Still review their work with the same kind of analytical and kind but critical eye that you want them to review your work with.
And also understand that not every bit of information, not every bit of feedback is helpful. This often comes down to they're your wrong target audience.
I ran into this in our last group. I brought the first chapter of my nerdy murder mystery story, and the people that were reading it aren't exactly nerds. So the first chunk of the story to them was very boring. And I'm like, okay, I get that. But I also understand that you are not my target audience. My target audience will probably find this to be very entertaining because it's a lot of inside D&D jokes.
If they ask you clarifying questions, you're allowed to answer. But the time for you explaining yourself is in the text and not necessarily outside of it. So don't hand something to someone and go, oh, by the way, I know it sucks. Well, then you brought the wrong thing to writing club that month. Listen to what they have to say and then take it or leave it. But they don't have to know if you take it or leave it.
So why do we want to focus on giving and receiving feedback? It helps so much in your writing process. It can help you improve the analysis of your own work as you analyze others and receive critique on yours.
We're going to talk a little bit more next episode about critical reading and how to read well, but giving feedback is at least as important as getting feedback for your writing.
And a lot of that is because you start to analyze. You start to look at the functionality of each sentence, at the purpose of the words. You look at what works for you, and that allows you to take a step back if you can put yourself in that same mindset with your own work to see what your work actually is from a critical standpoint instead of a very emotional connection standpoint.
This also helps you recognize which target audience you fall into, because what you recognize as good writing is a huge aspect on how you get your own writing to that point. What I see as good writing is something that's clear, that's concise, and just flies off the page and runs down the hall.
For me, I don't mind a slower story if I get absorbed in it. If the setting is really good and developed, if the magic is interesting, if the characters are fully developed, that to me is what good writing is, which is often why Lee and I don't read the same books, because what we consider good is very different, but they're all actually good.
So how your readers will start to understand your writing is often a reflection of how you understand similar writing and what you value in different types of stories.
So as you are working with other authors, You can have these back and forth conversations. You can have a discussion about what does and what doesn't work. The kind of critiques I'm looking for changes depending on what story I'm bringing. The kind of critiques that I'm looking for are vastly different from what Lee looks for.
So that is our homework to you, to figure out the types of questions that you want answered when you are giving your manuscript to somebody else for feedback. You saw our list that we use in the Forge. Develop a list of questions that you can then bring to your writing club.
And then bring it to your writing club, or find a community of authors, or find someone that is willing to read and critique, and be willing to read and critique in return. This is something that I think a lot of new authors don't understand of how actually helpful it is. It is so important to the process because it gets you to start reading as an author instead of just reading as a reader, and writing as a reader instead of writing as an author, because those are very different mindsets to take to the whole process.
When giving feedback, when getting feedback, have goals in mind. Understand what this moment does and how you want it to improve your writing. And then it will. Because if you don't have these questions set aside, the value that you get from these critique sessions will be minimized. So make sure that you know what you want and make sure that you
write selfishly.
If you have a question or comment for our hosts or a topic you'd like us to cover, send us an email at writingroots@aspenhousepublishing.com or find us on Facebook by searching for Aspen House Publishing.